acquisition, engagement, and retention. We're going to talk through a couple things here. So we have conversations every week with all of our clients, as does Fresh Address, and we're talking regularly, and in our weekly calls and QBRs and 2021 planning. There's a couple things that just keep coming back into our face that our brands have learned in 2020 that they're particularly aware of, improving upon for the future. And the first is, how much of your active customer reach is represented by the engaged email subscribers you have on your file? How proportional is that database to what you see as your customer reach? We have a lot of clients who March came around, their business was totally upended. They had to rethink the way they did business, and tell as many of their customers about it as possible. Maybe they stopped doing in-store, maybe they changed their delivery service, maybe they were pushing more products through e-com, and they had to very quickly tell as many of their customers as possible. And for some of our clients, that's, they think of their audience as 10 million people or 100 million people, but very few of them have an active, engaged email list that matches that. In many cases, it's a very small fraction of this. So when March hit, it kind of hit a lot of our clients in the face, man, email would be the perfect way to be getting these updates out. And we saw from our engagement metrics, consumers agreed. They were checking and opening more often for these types of updates. But you have to have the people on your file and have them nurtured and be sending them the right message at the right time. So that's the first big question we're having, and with all of our clients this year is, how much is that subscriber list really comprised of the customers that you want to be talking to? And if you're not there, to our second point, do you have a strategy to make up the difference? So identifying the problem is only the first step. Coming up with a solution to the problem is oftentimes just as challenging, and that's why acquisition has become the buzzword, the number one objective for virtually all of our clients' email programs in 2020. And the third question is, now you have a solution, how do you scale quickly and effectively? You can't just go out and buy a list or double your database tomorrow. How do you do it well? How do you actually grow that database in a meaningful way? So, these are the three questions our clients are constantly asking that we're working towards solutions for. And 2020 has been kind of a year that slapped them in the face to realize it. So hand it over to Keith here for a little bit to talk through the importance of validation in any sort of acquisition process, or the reason that validation kind of pushes for acquisition.
Sure, thank you. And I think it's one of the key obstacles here is definitely email list churn. And the big thing to take away here is that the problem was already bad and it's gotten worse through the pandemic. So typically we find that 30% of the average list is lost to attrition each year. And I think the pandemic has thrown some fuel on the fire. We've noticed that bouncing and invalid email addresses that we process are definitely on the rise. The first 2 quarters of the year, we saw a massive surge in invalid email addresses in the client lists that we processed. Obviously, a lot of folks had unfortunately lost jobs, changed jobs. I think that contributed to it a lot. Even in the third quarter, we're still seeing about a 20% rise in email addresses that fail our deliverability check. So it's definitely a big problem. And then so that's the initial problem. And then why it's really an issue for marketers has to do with the dynamics that are brought on by the pandemic, right? So in 2020, most retailers, at least for a period of the first 3 quarters, they lost that personal store connection with consumers. And email was kind of the best way to maintain that relationship, to stay top of mind, and pushing people to their website was really the main driver and mechanism they had to keep their business afloat. Another trend that we've seen is that consumers, to some extent, have become more fickle, or at least more willing to try new brands, whether something's out of stock or there's not the buy-in of getting into a car and driving to a store. So this typical list churn then ramped up, then with some of these other trends on top of it, just make it even more painful to see that, third of your list being lost each year and being unable to communicate with your customers via email. And now I'll pass it for some tips on growing in a safe and effective way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that validation piece just proves you're kind of as email marketers trying to grow the database, you're up against 2 challenges. One, who do I not have yet? And who do I have that I have a bad email address for. So there's like, you're getting attacked from all angles as to why your file isn't as big as it needs to be truly effective. So, we've got some tips for growing in a safe and effective way as you look into acquisition. First and foremost, this sounds super obvious, but we like to start all of our conversations with clients, is just make sure you're maximizing all of your organic opt-in opportunities. Never miss an opportunity to collect an email address on site, exit pops, in store, abandoned cart. There's like a million different places where you have an interested, engaged consumer who probably would be willing to give you your email address, but you might not be asking yet. So really do some soul searching there and think about where are consumers engaging with me prior to having given me an email address, and can I throw it in there? I mean, it's not nearly as intrusive as it used to be. We tend to tell our clients to kind of err on the side of over introducing opt-in opportunities, especially when there's perceived value to the consumer. If you got 15% off for signing up for a newsletter or something, like consumers really can't see that stuff too much, and it's easy enough for them to click away. And absolutely, even for organic opt-ins, you got to make sure you have a validation solution in place. To Keith's point, it's a slip of the finger. It's entering an old email address. It's entering an email address that the next day is invalid because you had to switch jobs. Have validation in place at the point of opt-in, and have validation checks in place to be cleansing the database on a regular basis as well. But I think a lot of you guys probably are thinking, that's great, we're doing as much as we can in organic, we'll keep doubling back on it, but like, we need to do something here to throttle acquisition to hit our goals, and that requires testing some sort of paid solutions for email acquisition. I should say, you don't have to totally, the time for paid is now. It's not when you've like stopped getting organic subscribers, because by their very nature, they're always going to be trickling in. They're organically engaging with your brand. It's more when you feel like you've plateaued and you know for sure that organic subscriber acquisition is not going to get you to your database growth goal. As soon as that happens, you should start exploring paid solutions. And for virtually every brand that DMI and FreshJust talks to, that's true. It's true now. There are very few that are just like rolling in organic email opt-ins and like need to push people away. So maximize organic, but quickly try to test paid solutions, because it's hard to find one that works. It takes a lot of work. Great way to acquire new customers, obviously. Great way to connect with current offline customers through email append processes, which FreshJust does a great job of. And also connect with customers who you lost an active email to the point Keith made in the previous slide, with an email change of address lookup, which is another thing FreshJust does a great job of. Keith, if there's any other info you want to add on either of those points?
Yeah, sure. I think with regard to appending, that can be very, very effective, and it's the low-hanging fruit to some extent. If you've got some level of information on your customers, you've got their postal information, you've got first name, last name, but you're looking to reach them via email, that process can help facilitate that. And then I think there's really this predicament that a lot of our customers and marketers get into where, yes, they have a validation solution in place, and that's wonderful, but at the end of the day, they're getting results back and finding out that, okay, 10%, 20% of my list is bouncing or inactive. It's great to clean that out for a number of reasons, but then what do I do with those contacts? How do I reconnect with them via email? And that's where ECOA enters the equation for consumer relationships. So again, two very good things to think about testing out, see how they work in your process with your business, and that's a quick synopsis of how those work.
Awesome. And then lastly, no matter what paid acquisition solution you're looking into, you have to focus on early engagers and optimize quickly. It's the only way to make it work. There's no silver bullet acquisition solution that you can go turn to tomorrow to hit your database goals. It's going to take a lot of work. So whether it's a paid acquisition solution like Facebook lead ads or co-registration, or you set up a sweepstakes or do a co-branded partnership, or it's a paid solution like an append process or the email change of address process, like you said. Yeah, DMI and FreshJust are always impressed with our clients. No matter what the paid acquisition you're doing is that's getting you a new to file email subscriber, you want to treat those subscribers intelligently and look for the ones that engage early and optimize towards sources that are getting you those early engagers, because they perform differently than organic opt-ins. By their very nature, they didn't come to you and ask for your emails. You kind of went out and did some paid marketing of some kind to try to get their email onto your address. You have to be very in tune with the ones that actually are engaging and want to be receiving your messages most often.